I get asked a lot of questions on the four-cylinder and six-cylinder Mercedes overhead cam engines concerning valves hitting the tops of pistons. And there's an awful lot of things that go into figuring out what is right and what is wrong with these cylinder heads, especially after people who don't know what they're doing get a hold of them. And I have personally seen what can happen with what is called an interference engine, which means if the camshaft is out of time with the pistons, the intake valves are going to hit the tops of the pistons. My F-150 with a 4.6 liter overhead cam engine, the timing chain tensioner failed and the timing chain jumped and bent a valve, and on those engines you can't remove the cylinder heads without removing the entire engine from the vehicle. So I know what it's like to have an interference engine jump time and make your life really difficult. And so when you're faced with these Mercedes cylinder heads, there are an awful lot of things to consider when you're trying to diagnose cylinder head issues and valve issues. First of all, if you've got the head off of the engine and it's you need to check several things. First of all, you need to check to make sure that you've even got a flat cylinder head. They have a tendency to warp, and what they like to do is warp right in the middle. The cylinder heads will, as they get overheated and as they lift, or if the head gasket gives way because of a crappy ass head gasket design, these heads lift right in the middle. And as you can see, we've got fairly thin areas right here where water can start leaking. In fact, this head was leaking, and the way you can tell that is by reading the head gasket or where the head gasket used to be. Now you've got your fire ring, which goes all the way around here, and that's what keeps the compression in and everything else out. And you see how shiny it is right here? See how nice and shiny this is right here? And you come over here, you shiny, and then you get over here, and all of a sudden you've got corrosion. Well, that's where the head gasket was leaking. The cylinder head was leaking between that here and the gasket. And everywhere you see corrosion or darkness, you had leakage in here. So that's one of the first things you need to do is check to see if you even got a flat cylinder head. And to do that, you use a straight edge. This is an actual precision straight edge from Starrett, and it is designed to check straightness on the head. And what you do is you put it, assuming the head is clean, because you can't have any old gasket material on here, you put the straight edge on there, and then you start running feeler gauges underneath there. And this one's a 4/1000, and here's a 5, 6. Just keep going until we figure out. Looks like it stopped at about 7. Okay, so that's pretty decent. Between 5 and 7 thousandths warpage you can live with. Anything greater than that, 10 or greater than that, you need to heat the cylinder head on a straightening device and straighten it out before you mill it. And because if you don't straighten it out first, the surface where the valve cover goes is going to be warped, because these things warp in a bow-shaped fashion. So this end here is going to be warped up, and this end over here is going to be warped up, and the middle is going to be the low spot. So if somebody comes along and starts milling this cylinder head, they're going to hit here first, skip here, and hit here, and eventually they're going to mill this down until the center part touches. Well, what happens is this is flat, but the surface where the valve cover goes is not flat, and it's also where the cam shaft and towers sit. And if you don't have a straight cam tower and camshaft, then you're in a world of hurt on that side. So one of the first things you're going to do is the straight edge on both sides of the cylinder head. Now then, in terms of the actual valves, part of the machining process are the valves below the part. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's skip back. All right, let's go back. Also, in addition to checking for straightness, you need to check to see how thick the cylinder head is. So you're going to use a micrometer, and on these heads, the original thickness is 3 inches 346, which is 85 millimeter, and they can go down as low as 3 inches 306. You can have 40 thousandths of material removal. Now we've already measured this head, and you'll notice it says 3 inches 347. This actually is a brand new head, and it's thicker. It came out of the factory a little bit thicker than the specifications, and I've seen this happen in a few instances. It is interesting. And this one over here measures 3 inches 349. So you actually ended up with a little bit thicker than usual cylinder head. So if your head is below minimums in terms of the thickness, then you're in a world of hurt. Also, the thickness is going to dictate how much you're going to remove when you're doing the valve job, and how far down the valves are going to sink. We're only talking about the intakes, because the exhausts are really down deep and we don't care about them. We're only talking about the intakes. And if the intake is not deep enough below the parting surface, the intake is going to hit the piston. And if the head is intact and on the vehicle, what I do is I run the piston up to top dead center, and then I will depress the rocker arm depress the rocker arm in the valve until the valve hits the top of the piston, and usually want about 40 thousandths clearance. Now then, if you've got the head off of the vehicle, and you've got to start talking about how well the machine work is done, or the machine work that's going to be coming to be done, we are going to talk about the most important thing, which is the permissible deviation of valve head below the separating surface of the cylinder head, and the minimum distance of new valves and new seats, and it's all negative, which means it's below the parting surface, below the cylinder head surface. Metric is 0.5 millimeters, which is 20 thousandths. That's on a new one. Max distance with remachined valves, seats, and reground valves is up to 80 thousandths below the parting surface. Now what's interesting is this cylinder head, this new one, we got our depth mic out and we used it to check, and this new head had valves that are actually 37 thousandths below the parting surface, which is more than the factory written specification says. So even within factory work itself, there was some deviation. Very, very interesting to see what they did back in the old days. Anyway, what we want to do is to make sure that we've got at least 20 thousandths to 80 thousandths distance between the top of the valve and the parting surface. And I've already measured, and the way to do that, the best way to do that, excuse my camera work here, the best way to do that is with a depth micrometer. And I've already measured this one, and I know that it's 0.059 below the parting surface. So what you do is you set up your depth mic, and you can certainly use a caliper, but a dial indicator, but it's really difficult because you got to somehow bridge this surface and then measure down. So this is a depth micrometer is the best way to do this, and all you do is start here at 0. We start at 0. Let's see if I can even find 0 without my glasses. All right, there's 0. And we start dialing it down. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. And we snug it, and we stop right there. All right, 59 thousandths, 60 thousandths. This valve is 60 thousandths, 59 to 60 thousandths below the parting surface. That means we've got plenty of space, plenty of room, so that when the engine is running, this valve is not going to hit this piston. Hit that piston. What else we have to worry about? When the machine shop, your best bet is what you do with these heads is figure out how warped it is, and if you need to put on a straightening block, you straighten it first. You then mill it, making sure you don't go below minimum specifications. You mill it, then you do the valve job so that you can sink the valves below the parting surface the correct amount. And that is the last thing you should have to do, and then you reassemble. Now then, if you have removed material, you need to make that up, because what happens when you remove the material from the cylinder head, you are actually making the heads thinner, and that's moving the camshaft closer to the crankshaft, which is adjusting your timing. It's changing your valve timing. The relationship of the cam to the crank is specified at the factory, and once you start milling the head, things change. So what you want to do is get shims. There are shims made by the 190SL Club, and are commercially available shims that go underneath the cam towers and will make up the space that has been, the thickness that has been milled off the cylinder head. The commercially available ones are 15 thousandths thick, and I think the 190SL Club has them 15 or 20 thousandths thick. Anyway, generally you'll need one or two sets of those. And if the head has been milled incorrectly so that this surface is flat and this surface is warped and out of alignment, you can use the shims in one tower or the other to make up the difference and keep the camshaft flat. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.